Watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. Australians observe a minute of silence during a national day of reflection for the 15 people killed in the Bondi Beach attack. The shooting targeted a Hanukkah event, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is booed at the National Memorial amid anger. US President Donald Trump prepares a more aggressive immigration crackdown in 2026, with billions in new funding and expanded workplace raids. The push comes as agents step up operations in major cities, even as political backlash grows ahead of next year's midterm elections. Israel's Security Cabinet approves 19 new settlements in the occupied West Bank, according to an official statement. The decision brings the total number of settlements approved in the past 3 years to 69. The United States intercepts an oil tanker off Venezuela in international waters, days after President Donald Trump announces a blockade of sanctioned vessels. US officials say the strip is part of Venezuela's so-called dark fleet as tensions rise in the region. The Kremlin says European and Ukrainian changes to US proposals for ending the war in Ukraine do not improve the chances of peace. The commitments come as Russian and US envoys hold talks in Miami amid concerns the plan favors Moscow. 9 people are killed and 10 wounded after gunmen opened fire at a tavern in Johannesburg's Buckersdale Township, police say. Authorities launch a manhunt for around 12 suspects who flee in 2 vehicles. Russian President Vladimir Putin's top foreign policy aide says European and Ukrainian changes to US peace proposals do not improve the chances of ending the war. The comments come after leaked US draft plans raised concerns in Kiev and Europe that the proposals favored Russia. Israeli forces shoot dead 2 Palestinians, including a 16-year-old boy, during separate raids in the Jenin area, according to Palestinian officials. Security footage shows soldiers firing at close range as incidents add to deadly tensions in the occupied West Bank. We start this hour in West Asia, and fresh violence has been reported despite a ceasefire that came into effect in October. In Gaza, 1 Palestinian has been killed by Israeli forces in what officials describe as the latest violation of the truce. In Gaza City, emergency teams rescued 5 people after the roof of a 3-story building collapsed in the Sheikh Wadwan neighborhood. Meanwhile, Turkey's foreign minister has warned that repeated ceasefire violations by Israel are creating major risks to moving forward with the second phase of the agreement. In the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces killed 2 Palestinians, including a child, during a raid in the Aqabat Jaber refugee camp near Jericho. Residents also reported that 2 young men were severely beaten as Israeli troops stormed their homes, further escalating tensions on the ground. We're now joined by Mati Zaweg, a geopolitical commentator joining us live from Tel Aviv. Mati, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, violence has not stopped in either of the Palestinian territories. Let's start with Gaza. Of course, nearly 400 people have died since the ceasefire came into effect on October the 10th. What's your analysis on this renewed violence and violence in general continuing after both Hamas and Israel signed that ceasefire deal, and of course the prospects of moving on to its second phase?
Well, I think that usually, as we were talking in the past, the question is who is fulfilling the agreement. And if Israel has deployed themselves to what is called the yellow line, and they say they are going to continue fulfilling if they give back all the hostages, they give everyone except one, and I hope they will give him back too. And Israel is going to restrain themselves. But when your soldiers are in an area that was agreed, and you have all kind of terrorists from Hamas trying to infiltrate, trying to sabotage. And so do you expect them not to defend themselves or not to counterattack? And that's what they are doing. They are not having the initiative outside the yellow line to kill Palestinians or to breach the agreement. They have been forced to do that. And usually Israel do it in what the world sees as a disproportionate way. And what is this word proportional? Because they are defending themselves from a terrorist group that has been defined by all parts, including the Arab countries that are moderate and they are part of the agreements, that they are extremists, they have to be dismantled for their weapons. They don't want to do that. They want to continue the grip on the Gazan society, and they are trying to avoid that. And then after every time that Israel responds, they say, oh, you are breaching the agreement. This is what's happening. And this is in Gaza only, but in the West Bank, it's an ongoing thing.
Well, Matti, just wait. We'll talk about the West Bank in just a second. Of course, we've had some statements come out from Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan. He says that these repeated Israeli violations, as he calls them, calls them, are unacceptable when going into these second phase negotiations. Does Israel bear some responsibility to keep the peace, given that it is, of course, a democratic government, and of course its defences and of course its military is far, far stronger than Hamas's?
So, look, first let's talk about Turkish. The Turkish, they are never going to be neutral. They are from the side of Hamas. They were before, they were during the war, they are now. So if you want to give me some neutral opinion, it's not the Turkish. The Turkish have a leadership that want to be the champion of the Palestinian issue and the champion of the Arab world, and Erdogan behaving as a sultan from the Ottoman Empire. So it's his problem, not Israel's problem. That's why he was denied from entering an international coalition, giving international aid, yes, being part as soldiers, no. This is why. So if we are talking about the neutral Turkish talking about it. But if we are talking about what is going on in the West Bank, for instance,
Matti,
all the time.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Of course, we've seen renewed violence there today, on the same day that 19 new settlements were approved by the Israeli government, that were put forward by Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. Of course, you know that these settlements under international law are viewed as illegal. Annexation is constantly threatened by especially the right in Israel. Donald Trump has said that he's not going to let Israel annex the West Bank. However, they do still continue to build settlements on the Palestinian territory's land. What consequences, if any, will come Israel's way if they continue to do this building, this constructing, and violence continues to escalate in the West Bank?
The construction of settlement has been going on from not day one, from 67 6 days war. And every time with different governments, from Labour to Likud government to this actual government, which is very extremist in their view that all these territories must stay forever in Israel. And if you know the internal, not only political situation, but history, parts of these territories has been for thousands of years inhabited by Jews that were massacred, and that's why they are not there today. So the extreme right say we must settle again and stay forever. The center say this is a belt. This is something that is going to defend us in the future negotiations if the Palestinians are going to be serious about peace. And from the left, they say peace now, just give back. This is an internal thing that is going on in Israel for the last 57 years. And so they continue to build. Why? Because we have this kind of government. And why we have this kind of government? Because for the last 30 years, all Palestinians authorities that have been in charge, they were refusing peace deals and converted the public in Israel to the right, when most of these 30 years ago were on the center left or left, with terrorist attacks, exploding with people in the markets and in the buses. These have shifted over the years. This is not something that is occurring today, suddenly. So if someone from the Palestinian side is going to be really serious in proposing peace and not terror, that's what is going to put the Israeli government on the corner. Because the Israeli governments, the different ones, they are not receiving proposition of peace, only nice words and terror. That's why. And that's why they also in Gaza must enter in phase 2, so they can have a future, they can have an alternative government, so they can govern themselves and not just talking like the Europeans, two-state solutions, when you have no really leadership in Gaza and not a really leadership in the Palestinian Authority, that they are in conflict between themselves. And all the surveys say that in any election today, free election, the Hamas maybe is going to win for 55, 60%. So we must understand what is the reality, and not only the nice words.
A hard question
Matti.
from South Asia. Was today...
Matti, do stay with us. Apologies there, we had some audio issues. As we move on to a related development, and Israel's defense industry recorded its highest ever profits in 2024, with weapons manufacturers increasingly marketing their systems as what they call battle-tested. Promotional material has highlighted real-world use during Israel's military operations in Gaza, which companies say demonstrates the effectiveness of their products. The surge in sales comes despite ongoing legal proceedings at international courts in The Hague and an arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Israeli defense exports have continued to grow, with demand rising across multiple regions. And according to official figures, Israel sold weapons worth approximately $15 billion in 2024, marking a 13% increase compared to the previous year. Europe emerged as the largest buyer of Israeli arms, then followed by India. Matti Zaweg joins us once again. Companies here promoting real-world use after the weapons are used in Gaza. Is it morally defensible to turn this conflict into a sales pitch?
Well, most of these defense or attack systems that have been all the sales to Europe and to India especially, they are not used in Gaza. I mean, not some of them, yes, but not most of them, because they are, for instance, they are using, Arrows 3 missiles. They are being selling to Germany, for 4.3 billion. This is something you don't use in Gaza. Or air defense system, that they are 48% of all the sales that have been to other. Of course, Israel was in battles, and when you are in battles, you accumulate experience and you use weapons that you can show the potential buyers how they are. But they are, primarily, you can believe it or not, Israel did all these weapons to defend themselves. And then they started selling them so they can keep investigating and doing better weapons in the future. Because people don't know really that the $3 billion approximately that they receive every year from the United States, this is not for Israeli weapons. This is to buy American weapons. So all the rest must be done by the Israelis themselves. They have unprecedented sales now in 2024 with almost $15 billion. And 54% they were for Europe and all the rest, they were mainly for India and also other countries. Some of them, they are known or not, like South Korea and Singapore and other countries. And this is also why Europe, because they are afraid of what can happen in the future in NATO with their what's going on in the war between Ukraine and Russia. So it's a desire to modernize their defense capabilities, and they're buying a lot, like Sweden, like Finland. I mean, when Sweden and Finland joined NATO, in the first 6 months after they joined it, they bought more than $4 billion from Israel. And then you have countries in Europe like Spain that they are banning sales or buying from Israel weapons, and then the defense statements in Spain, they are asking desperately from Israel to buy them through third countries because they are really in need of this modernization of their weapons. So this is the reality. I mean, we are used to use weapons because we are being attacked in 7 fronts in the last 2 years. And this is an invaluable experience that is very well known in the world, and they're very valued. And that's what's going on. I mean, if you want to talk about India, India is a long-standing partner. They have been an historical ties, but usually most of the sales, they were a question of, they were a buyer, a seller, and that's all. But now this is evolving. This is an evolving relationship because it's shifting from a simple buyer-seller dynamics to more focus in joint development and manufacturing partnerships, with India giving some raw materials and in Israel producing in this partnership in Israel and in India itself.
Okay. Matti Zaweg, thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get your insight on these issues. Hopefully see you again soon. We now move on, and a stricter phase of the US immigration crackdown is being prepared for 2026, with plans confirmed for expanded workplace raids and a massive funding boost. An additional $170 billion has been approved for immigration enforcement agencies, allowing thousands of new officers to be hired, new detention centres to be opened, and deportation operations to be widened. The move is being made despite declining public approval of the president's immigration policy and rising concern over aggressive enforcement tactics in major cities. With midterm elections approaching, concern is growing among voters and local leaders as questions are raised about how expanding workplace enforcement could affect businesses. Joining us now is Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, an international relations and a defence expert, to join us in this discussion. Dr. Kochar, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Donald Trump campaigned on the largest deportation in US history. However, we've seen ICE and their actions and methodology of how they're going about things turn very extreme in some circumstances. Of course, we see masked agents overtake the streets of cities and sometimes grabbing what they allege as immigrants on their way to work, just going about their daily lives and then being shipped off to the likes of El Salvador or imprisoned inside the United States without due process. However, we're 1 year into this now, and we're seeing a growing disapproval among American voters, with now 50% of Trump's 50% of people disagreeing with Donald Trump's approach to immigration, and 61% of all Americans disagreeing to the way that it's being done, and saying that immigrants deserve a record of due process. With midterm elections coming up at the end of next year, how do you think an increase in this immigration crackdown of Donald Trump is going to affect the Republicans' hold on the branches of power in the United States?
Thank you, Thomas. It's very interesting because President Trump, in his election manifesto, when he stood for elections, and he had broadly mentioned that he would have a crackdown on the illegal immigration. And so that is not really taken off in the manner he wanted it to accomplish. And with the midterm and the primaries also coming up next year, and his approval ratings on immigration has dropped from 50% to 41%. So I think it's a notable erosion, and especially among his core constituencies. See, if you get an approval rating below, or you actually come down in your approval rating in your non-core constituencies, that can be understood. But in case it is from the core constituencies, I think it is a cause of concern. There have been human rights, legal, and economic concerns as far as his immigration policy is concerned, because he has used his federal agencies to crack down on people, and at times it has been found that they were not immigrants only. So possibly the personal scores also being settled in this manner. And Miami is one state which has a large electoral immigration, and there is a backlash in this state. So I think he also realizes that there is a time now, and it is important for him to carry out damage control, and we call it actual damage control, because there has been a civil liberty debate going on in America, and these mass federal agents, they have used tear gas and detentions of individuals without any criminal record. So I think the human rights concern are there. That a lot of people have gone to the court also, which I think is not impacting his image very well. And as you rightly mentioned, the business is suffering. The economic concerns are also happening now in America, and especially sectors which are dependent on the immigrant labor, potentially affecting the inflation, and broader economic conditions are getting impacted. So I think a reframing of the policy, he is wanting now to change the strategy by a budget allocation,
Yes.
so that he can target the employers, he can target the job sites who are known to hire the undocumented workers. So this possibly, I think, is going to increase detentions and deportations, because whenever you want to enforce a law, and this has been my experience also in following the various countries, including India, whenever we want to enforce a policy, we have to hit the grassroots, because superficially you cannot enforce. You may be able to enforce for a short period of time, but possibly if you want to have a long-term effect, you have to get onto the grassroots, because we also saw how
Yes.
people are being sent to Canada, and of course they had to then resort to hiding themselves and smuggling themselves into Canada, in spite of paying the agents lakhs and lakhs of rupees. So I think this is a genuine concern. My last point is that, see, Donald Trump is unfortunately failing on most fronts. His peace accord in Gaza, I just saw your program just now on Gaza, it's actually failing, because whosoever you violates the ceasefire, it's the failure of the ceasefire ultimately. And what has happened in Vietnam is Thailand and Cambodia.
Yeah.
That war, which has escalated into a very large proportion. It is a total failure of Trump's foreign policy. So I think he needs to take on, apart from this immigration, I want to highlight here, there are many more areas where the course correction is required by Trump, and if he doesn't do that, he is going to face a problem next year when the midterm elections take place, when the primaries take place.
Dr. Kochar, stay with us as we move on to some other updates. And Rush Hour director Brett Ratner appears in a newly released batch of Jeffrey Epstein files from the US Justice Department. An undated photo shows the filmmaker posing alongside Jean-Luc Brunel, the late French modelling agent and longtime associate of Epstein. Brunel died by suicide in 2022 while in a French jail, facing charges of raping a minor and supplying minors to Epstein. The photograph featuring Ratner and Brunel does not include any information about the date, location, or context of the image. Officials have not provided further clarification regarding the photograph, which is part of a larger set of documents recently made public. We now move over to Europe, and Switzerland's Interior Minister Elisabeth Borme-Schneider has said that Switzerland must do more to shield children from social media risks by signalling that she was open to a potential ban on the platforms for youngsters. Borme-Schneider has said that following Australia's recent ban on social media for users under the age of 16, that Switzerland should examine similar measures. Earlier this month, the Parliament of the Swiss canton of Fribourg had voted to prohibit children from using mobile phones at school until they are at the age of 15, as the latest step has been taken at a local level in Switzerland to curb their use in schools. Major General Kochar joins us once again. Of course, do you think we're going to see, judging on how Australia does, of course, whose rules came in around a month ago now, do you think we're going to see a pattern of positive effects due to the fact that children don't get led on social media? And do you think we could see governments taking this way more seriously than they do at the moment?
It's very important, this thing aspect, Thomas, because we in India are also facing a similar kind of a problem, and if we have to discuss this issue, there has to be three dimensions of discussion. The first dimension is on the health factor, because there are medical reports to suggest that it has already started affecting the minds of children, and it has already started affecting the mental growth of the children, because if they are exposed to these kind of games and dragon games and devil games and all sorts of these games, so it is actually affecting the psyche of the children, as we have seen in the United States. If you remember, there have been certain incidents of young students having actually gun in their hand and firing it out, candies, floss kind of the games and all, they keep on playing. So I think mental and health aspects is one important issue. But the second important is the psychological aspect, because the growth of the human mind, and if you study actually psychology, there is an upper cortex and there is a low cortex, and there is an amygdala, and we actually call it at times amygdala hijack. When there is so much of anger in a person that he cannot control his emotions.
Yes.
So this important aspect regarding the growth of the human mind, I think is actually undergoing a change, and that is the psychological aspect. The anger which gets built in the children, if he is denied, if supposing he has to do his homework and it will require 2 hours to do his homework, he will try to cut short that time of doing the homework, rather than cutting out the time on the social media. So the psychological aspect is very important. And the third important aspect is the social aspect. A child is not interacting with his parents any longer. He is interacting on social media and he doesn't want to be disturbed. So the relationships I'm actually talking about, the mother-daughter, the
Yes.
mother-son, the father-daughter and the father-son actually is getting impacted. So I'm glad that Australia has come up with this thing. Of course, there'll be
Yes.
protagonists who will say that freedom of information is being curtailed. Okay, so that is okay if 18 years and above. But in these formative years, you are making the young children who are going to be the future leaders of your country. So, what kind of adverse information or adverse kind of a propaganda you are putting in his mind from a very, very young age? So, I think because it's a very impressionable age, so we
Yes.
need to understand the growth of the child as it happens from the age of 3 to 8 is a very crucial part in the growth of a child,
Doctor.
and they actually leave you permanent scars and permanent memories in the minds of the children. So I will conclude by saying that I think this awareness is very welcome, and I think India should also take a leaf out of this and do something about the IT laws and all these information
Yes.
laws keep on saying, because
Dr. Kochar, I'm so
well-being
sorry we
of-
have run out of time. Thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World, and thank you very much for providing your insight on those issues. That is all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.